All right, to everyone signing in, it is 12 o'clock by my watch, so we're going to get started. Welcome to the Kinship Navigators Lunch and Learn series. Our December edition is Kinship Families, the New York State Caregiving Respite Coalition. Just a few housekeeping things. We do have everybody on mute since this is a webinar style presentation. If you have questions during the course of the webinar, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will address them as we see them or at the very end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, so you can access it on the Navigators YouTube page. We will send out the recording to all participants, and it will be on the Navigators website. If you have questions about any of it, all of our email addresses are in the PowerPoint and you'll see them at the very end. So feel free to ask questions during the webinar or submit them via email at another time. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rae Glaser. I am the director of the Kinship Navigator program, and we're joined today by NYSCRC to talk a little bit about kinship caregivers and options for respite. So I'm going to kick off the webinar to talk a little bit first about our Lunch and Learn series and then about the Kinship Navigator. As you can see, we have a Lunch and Learn series that we offer to professionals, kinship caregivers, anybody interested in kinship care on the third Thursday now of every month from 12 to 12:30. Here is a listing of some of our previous webinars. They're all available on the Navigator YouTube page and will be available on the Navigator website. And in this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click right on the videos. And upcoming save the date, January 18th, will be our next Lunch and Learn, and we will be meeting with the Court Improvement Project to talk about kinship and child permanency mediation. If you have any suggestions for future Lunch and Learns, please feel free to send them our way. We've heard feedback that these are really helpful and informative, and we want to make sure that we are partnering with the best organizations to get you what you need. So let's talk a little bit about what the New York State Kinship Navigator can do for you. As I said, I'm Rae Glaser. I'm the director of the program. We have staff that work for the Kinship Navigator in Albany, Buffalo, and Rochester. We are information, referral, education, and advocacy for kinship caregivers, prospective caregivers, and professionals. We serve all kinship caregivers, so it doesn't matter if they are formal, informal caregivers. Our main goal is to provide that information, education, and referral. We do so in the form of legal fact sheets, our helpline. We have virtual case assistance for kinship caregivers. We have educational opportunities across the state for professionals, Zoom or in person, Kinship 101, kinship legal options, kinship financial options, KinGap. We also act as the chair of the KinCare Coalition. We have a meeting with the KinCare Coalition tomorrow at 12 o'clock. If you're interested, feel free to drop me an email. We'll make sure that we get you connected with the KinCare Coalition. That is our driving force for kinship policy across New York State. And our Associate Director, Ryan Johnson, runs that effort. We also offer advocacy for kinship caregivers, both case-by-case and statewide advocacy. The Kinship Navigator, we're accessible via our helpline Monday through Friday, 10 to 4 at 877-454-6463. We also have a website. I'm going to click right forward to that. It's a brand new website. We just did an overhaul. And on our website, we have easy to access information for kinship resources. You can see our map right here. You choose your county and your service, and it'll take you right to where you need to go. We have legal fact sheets for kinship caregivers. We have online education in the form of videos. And during business hours, we have an online chat feature where you can connect and speak to a kinship navigator directly. We also have our helpline, as I said, Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. You can call and speak directly to a kinship navigator, get information on what your kinship concerns might be. Usually we're handling financial assistance, legal options, educational enrollment, access to vital documents, but we are able to kind of act as that open door policy for any concerns that a kinship family might have. We also invite professionals to contact our helpline, to visit our website, to talk to our kinship navigators via online chat if you've got questions about clients that you're serving. One big project for the Kinship Navigator is our virtual case management. It's something that we piloted starting in 2019, where we are working with kinship caregivers in a one-on-one capacity, virtually case management style. So instead of being on site with the kinship caregiver in 1 to 2 counties, we're able to service 8 to 9 counties virtually. So when you or a client calls us at the Navigator helpline, if you are from one of the counties listed on this slide, you are offered the option of being connected to a virtual case manager. And that is more in-depth services than information, referral, and education. When you're assigned to a virtual case manager, they are able to work with you on a one-on-one capacity. They can stay on the case for up to 6 months. They can assist you with benefits application, referrals directly in your community, assistance with legal options, and really act as the case manager for that client for up to 6 months. You don't need to do anything special to enroll in those services. If you're calling our helpline or contacting the Navigator via email or online chat, we will offer those services to you. Another form of outreach that the Navigator has is our permission to contact form. If you're working with a kinship family as a professional, or you are looking for services and don't want to call the helpline directly, you can fill out that permission to contact form. Our link is right here to download the form. It's also available right on our website, and we will include that with the material from today's presentation. It's an easy way for families to be linked to us. It's simple explanation of what the Navigator does, how we can benefit caregivers, and then how to contact a caregiver. If you fax that or email us to the Navigator, we will reach out to the caregiver within the first 48 hours to connect with them. And if we're unsuccessful, try the second time. We find that a lot of caregivers prefer this permission to contact form because it takes the onus off of them to get in touch with the Navigator. And when they're going through quite a bit, and they have a lot on their plate, it's one less thing for them to do, and we will reach out and make that connection with them. We also have on our website brochures, posters, other outreach materials for you to download. If you would prefer for us to send those hard copy to you, you can get in touch with me directly. My email is right on the PowerPoint, but you can also call the Navigator and request those, or send us an email. With that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Doris Green from NYSCRC to talk about one thing that we see a lot with our kinship families, and that is the need for respite services. As I said in the previous slide, there's a lot of kinship families that are totally overwhelmed with everything that's going on right now. They're not given a lot of notice before they get these kids in their care. They've got a lot of questions, and they haven't had a lot of time to prepare to be a caregiver. So a lot of them are really overwhelmed, and in addition to needing access to information and benefits, they really are in need of respite services. So Doris, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about respite care. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rae. So I am the director of the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, and the coalition was started about 10 years ago, and we are charged with helping to develop a sustainable system of respite care throughout the state. And so we recognize that kinship caregivers are the hidden foster families of this state, and that we don't have enough direct services in place to be able to provide kinship caregivers with respite. So we're starting a new program. It's called a consumer directed voucher program, which I'll talk more about. But Karen, you can see her on the screen, is the new program director for this program, and she will be your main point of contact. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the program. So we know that kinship caregivers have little access to services for respite. If you're not familiar with what respite is a break from caregiving to take care of yourself. And we know it's very proven that a little time away from the responsibilities of caregiving can increase your health outcomes, can help you be less stressful, can give you the room to breathe so that a kinship caregiver is able to provide more care with more patience, love, and understanding. So respite benefits both the caregiver and the child in their care. So this program, however, has two components. One is to provide vouchers for kinship caregivers, and one is to provide vouchers for persons with long-term chronic disabilities, any age. So we're funded under the Lifespan Respite Grant, which supports caregivers across the age and disability spectrum. So it could, the second pot of money here could benefit parents with a child who has autism, to somebody who is caring for someone with MS or Parkinson's. And this is really primarily for people who don't have access to respite dollars through another program. So the applicant must be the primary caregiver. Both the child and the caregiver must reside together. So for this population, we're talking about kinship caregivers. They must live in New York State. In this virtual world, we've had lots of people come to our trainings who aren't from New York State because they see it on social media. So we want to be clear that this is a benefit for New York State residents only. Our kinship caregivers must not be receiving other forms of respite support from other programs. And we know that there are very few options for respite support for kinship caregivers. So we don't think that that's a big issue. Our kinship caregivers cannot be in formal foster care, adoption programs, or in the KinGAP program. We know that all of those programs provide additional supports. We are really focusing on informal caregivers who are kind of going it alone, and we want to make sure that they're getting the respite and supports that they need. The other piece that I talk about is eligibility versus availability. It's more prevalent in the long-term chronic category, but I want to make sure that everybody is included. And so to say that if there is a caregiver who has a child who's on some kind of wait list for services and they are not able to get the services, if they were in KinGAP or formal foster care, probably not, but in the KinGAP program, if we were to understand that they were on a wait list and they weren't able to get services for a long time, we would consider them for our program. Go ahead, Rae. So paying respite providers, we will provide vouchers for individuals or agencies. So let me talk about consumer directed. If you're not familiar, consumer directed means the caregiver gets to choose who they want to provide the respite services or the care for the children, so the caregiver can get away and get a break. So you could choose, or caregivers could choose. I know we have professionals and caregivers on the call, so I want to make sure I'm addressing everyone. A caregiver could use a neighbor, a friend, someone in their faith community, or they could use an agency, or they could sign their child up for some kind of program. Say, I'm going to use the YMCA, for example. I know that they have, fun days when the kids are off school and the caregivers have to work. Those are opportunities that we would allow for using the voucher. So the kids could be in a safe place, a good place for them, and the caregiver can continue to do what they need to do for themselves. Under consumer directed, it must be clear though that the caregivers are the employers. So they manage all aspects. They provide, they have to choose who it is, hire them. You can choose how much to pay them. And we'll show you how to do that in a little while. Choose how much to pay them. We suggest anywhere between $15 and $25 an hour, depending on your situation. So, think about it. The vouchers are $600 and you want them to go as far as they can. So you choose how much to pay, and then it's done through a contract. Every respite provider signs a contract, and they can be either paid directly by us after the service is rendered, or the caregiver can pay them so that they don't have to wait any amount of time, and we can reimburse the caregiver. So I'm happy to take questions at the end. I know that's a lot. So if you have questions about that, we are here to answer them. In the packets that we provide, there are timesheets, and they must be signed by both the caregiver and the respite provider. And the caregivers, like I said, can pay upfront or be reimbursed. And we also have a caregiver survey that we want done at the end, because it's really important that we prove to funders that this is a good thing for kinship caregivers and that it's having positive outcomes in the caregivers' lives. So next slide, please. So the voucher program process. We need to make sure, so I say here that it must come through an agency or a kinship support group. The whole idea behind this is that we need someone to be able to vouch for the fact that the person that or the caregiver is in the situation they're in. So it's just a second step to make sure that the person is actually eligible for the program. So on the acknowledgement form, Karen, I think
The
it is.
The
The eligibility form. Okay, so on the eligibility form, there's a question about, you know, where the referral was coming from. So the kinship caregiver or the caregiver themselves can fill in that it came from a kinship navigator or the referral came from a kinship navigator. It's just a way for us to make sure that everybody's eligible, but we just need a professional or a support group person to kind of validate that. The forms, Karen, I'm going to let you talk about the forms a little bit and just say what they are and where they can get them.
Okay. Currently, our forms will be available on our NYSCRC website, and you also have the option of requesting that a packet be emailed, or I'm sorry, mailed to you. You would need to send me an email, let me know the packet that you're interested in, just put kinship. Also, whether or not you would like the forms in English or Spanish, because we do have available in both. The packet will include a list of all of the forms that are required for the application, for the eligibility. And that would be the eligibility determination form, the application form, and an acknowledgement signature form. Timesheets are also included so that they can be used once the caregiver has decided who they're going to use. And then those services have been rendered for the care receiver. The caregivers will receive an award notification by mail only once the application has been submitted to us. We've reviewed it, taken a look. The caregivers then will receive the award notification. At that time, then they can decide whether they want an individual to come and provide services or use an agency.
Next slide. So a couple of things that I want to add here before, and I don't know if we have any questions in the chat. It doesn't look like it. Is that we're also interested in supporting emergency respite. And so that would, you know, emergencies happen on the fly, obviously. So once a caregiver, if a caregiver's in an emergency situation and they have to pay someone to care for the children, while they tend to the emergency, you could make an application for emergency funding after that. It's done on a case-by-case basis. There is a question that what the emergency is, that we just need a little bit of an explanation about that. And I see a question in the chat. How often is the $600 voucher available? One time or multiple times? So, you know, we're opening this program January 2nd. We don't know exactly what the demand is going to be. I'm guessing it's going to be very high demand. We have to have this particular set of funds spent by August 31st. So we we will consider second vouchers if one gets used up, but we will give priority to those who have not received a voucher before. So it is a possibility, and we're kind of taking it as we go, because this is a brand new program for us. Does that help? Does the caregiver apply themselves directly to NYSCRC, or does the agency or professional apply for them? It can be done either way. As I said, the professional has to be, or the agency has to be named on the document. The caregivers can apply themselves as long as they have an affiliation with a professional or an agency. Does that help? No, there are no income eligibility requirements.
I think we had one more question. Can this be applied retroactively for services already provided, or is it for services going forward?
It's for services going forward. This is a new program, and you have to be approved before the voucher is awarded. So on the technical side, Karen, who's the program coordinator, will be keeping track of how much each voucher, how much has been spent, so that we can do two things. One, keep an eye on whether or not the caregiver is actually spending the voucher. What we don't want is for the vouchers to be sitting out there and not being used. And two, if the caregiver is having trouble finding respite providers, that we could help by reaching out to the social worker or the care manager or whoever, or they could, to see if they can brainstorm where they might find someone who could provide the respite. Is it $600 per family or per child? Great question. I was sitting on I actually serve on the family advisory board for the Kinship Navigator. I too am a kinship caregiver. I care for my 7-year-old granddaughter due to my daughter's drug addiction. And I know that that's such a very common scenario within the kinship community. So I do get it. But I heard a story from someone on that committee about the 3 children that they were caring for, and it dawned on me that we really need to look at this as an individual child issue. So it is $600 per child. Anybody else?
That's really helpful, Doris. I did advance to the next slide so that we've got contact information for both Karen and for Doris. We do have a couple of minutes left if anybody has additional questions, but I wanted to offer it up that you can reach either Karen or Doris via email with any additional questions that you might have.
So with the, let me just add then that with the, I was just looking at the questions and answers. They offer an hour a week. Does this disqualify me? Oh, that's a good question. You know, when we started the program, we knew we would have a lot of gray areas. And if you're getting 1 hour a week, I would say that you qualify. We know we're going to have to take a lot of these on a case-by-case basis, but an hour a week is not enough for anybody to take care of themselves.
Absolutely. We've got some feedback from Sandra Johnson. This is a great service, and I can't wait to offer this to some of my clients. We very much agree. Something that's really needed, very necessary. So Doris, Karen, thank you so much for this initiative. We appreciate it.
Well, and I just want to also, you know, give the New York State Office for Aging credit. They are our partners in this grant. And so they also are very much behind supporting kinship caregivers. So we have another question. Can this be used for camp? If so, how would that work with the timesheets? So we have an agency contract. So if you wanted to sign up for a camp, then you would contact the camp, tell them that you are going to use a voucher, that they will be receiving a contract through the New York State Caregiving and Respite Coalition, and we would pay them directly.
Fantastic. I didn't want to step on your toes, Doris.
No, go ahead.
I also just wanted to throw out there, you know, in addition for summer camp, Families that are receiving that non-parent grant should be eligible for a summer camp stipend. We
True.
do have all the information for each individual county right on the Navigator website, but if that's something that a client you're serving is not currently receiving and you think they might be eligible, feel free to reach out to the Navigator and we'll help you get connected.
The other thing is if CPS is involved, they will also pay for camps and for daycare. So those are the kind of questions that we would be asking. We do really truly want to put this money toward people who have no other resources.
Absolutely. It looks like we have quite a few more questions.
Okay, I'll let you field them, Rae.
You got it. Is this $600 a year?
Like I said, we will consider a second round of funding if we don't have other people who have never received it. So priority goes to people who have not received the funding before.
Okay, and we do have a comment. So excited for kinship families to have access to this. We'll share the information. Thank you, Amy. We appreciate that. The next question coming in, is this available today? If not, what is the start date?
It is available beginning January 2nd. So I would say to the care managers on the phone or the kinship navigators, if you want 5 or 10 packets, let us know. We'll start accepting applications as of January 2nd. And
Okay.
you could start distributing them and helping your families to fill them out.
Great, so that they can start helping families fill those out now.
Yep.
If they
Yep.
request those packets. Perfect. Where can we as kinship providers find respite providers or agencies for families?
Well, like I said, it's consumer directed. So it would be people who are in your personal circle of support, or you can research, what the programs are in the camps or the classes that are available in your town or area. This is a statewide grant, so I can't really speak to specifics, but YMCA's, town rec departments offer those kinds of programs, summer programs, all those kinds of places. But the other piece is we're not requiring that there's training for anyone that you choose to bring into your home. So that really is up to you. We did get feedback from a kinship support group where they didn't want to force training on anyone, that they felt like their situations were unique enough that they would want to provide that kind of information personally.
Sure, that makes sense. Can I qualify if I have legal custody?
No. Well, the question is, do you have supports in another place? I mean, yes, you would qualify, especially if you're not receiving respite dollars or nobody's paying for camps or anything. If you don't have respite options, you would qualify.
Yeah, usually legal custodians do not have those
Yeah, that's what I
options.
thought.
Yeah. And then just to note that camp reimbursement via Child Protective Services has age restrictions. There actually are some restrictions for reimbursement dollars for each county, which is why we always say that those $400 is available to most caregivers. So that's a good note to put forth. If you'd like more information on that summer camp that's available through DSS, take a look at the Navigator website. We've got fact sheets on it, or give us a call. The next question coming in, is there an age limit of the child or children?
Birth to 18.
And then also a note for everybody on the call, www.care.com is an online resource for looking up providers.
That's good.
Yeah.
Just good information.
And since, do I have a minute? So the coalition is partnering with the University of Wisconsin to do an online caregiver training that will become available probably in February. So that could also be an option. Once we do that training, we hope to start a website where caregivers who are certified through the training can simply register like care.com and be able to find a respite provider in the state. That's just something that's coming down the pike.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's great new developments that are happening every day with this program. It's really exciting. One more question coming in. What about using the funds for a child to visit a family member that lives out of state?
Well, that's a really good question. I guess I'd have to think about that one. We hadn't thought about, I assume that's paying for transportation kind of thing.
I would think so. You know, we're a little bit limited because we're accessing via chat. Yes, I see this coming in. Yep, that's what we're looking for.
At this point, we hadn't thought about that. We only thought we're only paying respite providers. So if one was to be creative, you could possibly hire the relative who's out of town, who's providing the respite, and they could choose to use it for transportation or not.
I think we're probably going to see questions like this come up as we develop the program, you know, to consider the different needs.
Yeah.
Another thought that's thrown out there is right now, this program is good for birth up to 18, and that foster care does support children up to 21. I know that it's rough with the different supports that are offered to different types of caregiving. That was just a suggestion to think about that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we are at 12:30. I really do want to open it up to everybody to continue those questions to go through to Karen or Doris, or you can always connect with the navigator to ask any questions that you have. We work in close partnership with NYSCRC. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. This recording will be available along with the slide deck, the permission to contact form via email for everybody that participated today. And save the date. We'll have information on how to register for our January Lunch and Learn out later this week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doris.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy
Have a good day.
holidays.